Hello everyone, welcome. I'm your host, Herobrinewarns, and today we are continuing our Game Awards series with lower honorable mentions. Now, what is the lower category? Well, I realized I had a lot of games selected for honorable mentions, and I'm trying to somewhat go over every game I played this year. So, this category are the games that were better than the meh or bad. However, they weren't like quite close or in contention for game of the year, or they didn't really have a chance of snagging it despite what I thought of them. So this is that's why this is the lower honorable mentions. There will be a higher honorable mentions that those ones just missed the category for contender for game of the year. So without further ado, let's get into the 6 games that are on the or in contention for the best lower honorable mention. Number 6, Phasmophobia. So I played this because a friend of mine, he asked me to play this with him, and we had quite the blast. The basic idea is that you're a bunch of ghost hunters, or I guess spirit hunters more accurately, and you have to like go into various haunted places, try to figure out what type of spirit is there, and you have to do all sorts of different things to identify it. You have to make notes about what happens to your various equipment, and depending on how accurately you detail everything will depend on how much you get paid, and you use the money to buy more equipment or better stuff. So it's a neat game. The only reason it's not higher is because it is a multiplayer game, and by yourself it's not as fun. Like, it is kind of more fun if you have multiple people helping you out, and also like it is kind of a lot to manage, where yeah, especially if there's just like one or two of you, it's like, oh, I gotta make notes, and then I gotta check the cameras here, and then I gotta leave the glow sticks here. So it can be quite a lot, but otherwise it's a fun multiplayer experience. I can recommend it. Number 5, Mortal Kombat 10. This game is way better than 11, just on the grounds that it doesn't have microtransactions like Mortal Kombat 11 did. And also, it's a rather fun game to play. It is still a fighting game, like, at the end of the day, so what you're seeing on screen is the extent of your gameplay, but it's rather enjoyable. The challenge mode, where you're like scaling towers, is fun. Just fighting your enemies is fun. It's all around a good game, and again, I like this way more than MK11, which ended up on the losers list. So not a bad game, just not a lot to say. Number 4, Kill or Love. This game was quite a trip. As you're playing it and as you're going through the plot, you're going to have a lot of questions, and you might even think poorly of your own character based on dialogue or his reactions to things. However, I will say that the actual ending bit nails it home rather well. I mean, the ending stuck the landing so well that it actually retroactively made me change my opinion on what I thought of this game, because it's just that good and it explains so much of the writing. But yeah, it's very, very worth playing. It's not a long visual novel, and as I said, the way it just sticks the landing at the end really brought everything together. So a very good visual novel, and it's free. It doesn't cost anything. It's free on Steam, so go try it. I highly recommend this visual novel. Number 3, A Maiden Astrologer Divines the Future. This is a rather wholesome visual novel, which is surprising, especially if you've seen the screenshots on Steam or GOG, or you just played the game a bit. But no, it is a rather wholesome game about a sister trying to navigate the world with her other sister just by themselves in Japan. So it's a very wholesome game. I really enjoyed the plot. But that all said, I do have to warn you. The ending after you beat the main story, well, it's a visual novel, so more of after you read the main story, is extremely graphic and adult content, which I was not ready for. I was rather surprised when that happened and how long it went for, but if you are into that, great, it's there for you. If not, you can stop playing once the credits roll, because the main story of this game is rather wholesome and heartwarming, so a very good game, and as I said, it earned its place in this honorable mentions list. Number 2, Black Ops 6. This is probably the only game from 2024 on this list, and they did not disappoint. This game is about the America post-Cold War, so it deals with things like Operation Desert Storm, the election of Bill Clinton, and part of the premise is like, where does America go now that it's the sole superpower in the world? That said, it isn't as good as Cold War, and especially towards the ending, it kind of leans heavily into MK Ultra aspects, which I really didn't care for. I felt it was going a little too far with it. My other complaint is that it seems to kind of be confusing the first Gulf War with the second Gulf War, as several characters repeatedly mentioned dealing with Saddam and weapons of mass destruction, which, while sure there was a concern of that in the 1990s, it wasn't become as prevalent as it, say, be in 2003 when the U.S. would invade Iraq during the second Iraq War. Some of the guns in this game and equipment. So a good example is they have XM4s everywhere, but the XM4 program would really be kind of developed and rushed out in response to Black Hawk Down, which would happen a few years after this game takes place. The other thing is that like some of the camos in the game, they were responses to things that happened during Desert Storm, so they weren't quite out yet. So like Adler's camo is he has that a little too early for when this game's supposed to be taking place. That all said, it is a fun game. There is a bit where it kind of opens up and you get this open world segment, which is really cool. It's really neat to kind of just explore the desert, targeting different objectives at your own pace. Another neat aspect was the safe house location in this game, where to access more of the safe house, you actually have to solve a whole series of puzzles. And I gotta tell you, they're not the most complicated puzzles. They're not like Myst level of like difficulty, but they are still somewhat difficult. And when you solve them, you feel like a genius, because you put in a lot of like different little legwork. And if you solve the puzzles in the house early, it actually preps you for various puzzles you'll come across in the rest of the game. So the puzzles in this game, they're not the most complex, but they're also not something you can just turn off your brain and work through. They actually do require some level of thinking, which was really fun to do. But overall, it was a fun game. I really enjoyed it. But I do have a lot of complaints about the plot in the last part, I guess second half of the game. It really kind of seems to lean too much into MK Ultra and trying to go into like mind control stuff, which I didn't care for, but not a bad game. Just felt it was weaker compared to some of its predecessors. Number 1, Drakengard 3. This game had some really high highs and some extremely painful lows. This is probably going to be the rest of this video because I got a lot of things to say about this game. And if you don't want any spoilers for this game, click off now. Thank you for watching. One other note, this is the trailer I'm playing, so the footage you've seen already shouldn't spoil too much, but yeah, as I said, I'm going to spoil the game, so click off now if you don't want to know anything else about this game. With that being said, let's continue. So the basic premise is you're playing as the girl seen at the beginning of this clip named Zero, and Zero wants to kill her other sisters. The exact reason is revealed later in the game, which I'll try to avoid a little bit because I don't want to spoil the whole game because it's definitely worth playing through to a certain degree. It's just it's gonna be a bit of a pain to get through it at times. So she's out to kill her other sisters, which is 1 through 5. If you get it, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the naming scheme we're going for here. And the gameplay is significantly better than Drakengard. I'll give it that. However, weirdly enough, the amount of enemies on screen is drastically less than the first game. And the other thing is, you never quite get that overwhelming sense of feeling you got in Drakengard 1. I'm going to try not to get too many comparisons to Drakengard because that game's coming way later on this list. I liked it a lot more than 3. Anyway, back on topic. One of the things I liked about 3 was the upgrade system's better than the first game. Instead of having to kill a ton of enemies to level your weapons, it's more of you have to like spend points and equipment you earn in the map. Kind of like what Nier did. The original Nier. Although I guess Automata does it as well, now that I think about it. So your main companion in this game is a dragon named Mikhail. Which is, you find out later in the game, he's a reincarnation of the dragon from the opening game named Michael. I guess apparently like dragons can reincarnate, but they lose their memories or something of that sort. That's the best way that it kind of explains it. As you're playing the game, though, there will be multiple failures depending on which endings you get. So, like, there's 4 endings to this game. There's A through D, kind of like Nier before Replicant. And the each ending always ends in failure to some degree, with the exception of D ending. Now, you have to play the first 3 to see the final ending, which is D. Now, I know Drakengard, and again, I realize I'm comparing to the first game, but it's kind of important for this point. Drakengard was a commentary on violence in video games, or how violence was kind of normalized in video games, and where, like, in real life, if you killed like 100 people, that would be seen as, you'd be seen as a psychopath. People think you're nuts. But in video games, it's just kind of normal. And Drakengard 1 was kind of a commentary on that. I'm not sure what this game was trying to actually say. Revenge is bad, I guess, but, like, it doesn't, I mean, we kind of all get that to a degree. I don't see, like, where I was supposed to question if my character was in the right, because it's kind of rare I ever do. Usually I just think she's kind of a jerk. Then on the flip side of that, the sisters you're trying to kill are also a bunch of jerks. So it's one of those where it's like, kind of seems like nobody's right. So then I kind of looked at the other characters. So there's companions you can get along the way, and you can bring up to 2 with you into battle. And all of them are also horrible people, which was the case in Drakengard 1. But what I mean is, I don't, like, ever sympathize or kind of try to understand them because they're just that awful. At least with Drakengard 1, I kind of felt bad for Leonard. Even though, I mean, he's a terrible person, but, like, you know, he did have his family slaughtered in front of him. I forget her name, I forget how you pronounce her name, but there's another lady you get in Drakengard 1 as a companion, and she kind of went crazy because she lost her children in a pact and also lost her sanity. So you kind of understand, like, what morphed these people. In this game, all your companions are, like, different extremes of just sex addicts. I mean, you have, like, the one guy who's into cock and ball torture and is constantly trying to remind you how much he enjoys being in pain. You have your other companion who's just into BDSM or just, I don't know, twisted stuff in bed. You have the old guy who's just a pervert. There really is no other statement. I mean, he pretty much, his whole character is, I'm old and horny. Let's fuck. Like, that's his whole character arc. And then there's the final guy who's just a sarcastic asshole that you kind of just want to beat up. And, like, that's it. But, like, what were we trying to say? Being a sex addict is bad? Because, okay. But also, like, I thought the idea is trying to be nuanced. I don't know. I that's what I mean. I don't know what this game was actually trying to say. And its message is kind of a mess. The other thing is that they constantly remind you about these personality traits of those companions. So, like, in combat, they're constantly talking about, like, what they're into. So they'll be like, oh yes, you performed great last night, or oh, if only I can imagine Lady Zero smashing my testicles in, and it's like, shut up, bro, let me play the game, stop. It just, it gets infuriating, and I just got frustrated with the companions. Like, the problem is that even if you select none, they still all have dialogue prompts and things they say when you enter the level, so you literally cannot escape the annoyance of these companions. Like, the gameplay is fine, but the characters are awful. And again, Zero is just kind of hell-bent on like, I gotta kill my sisters, and anybody in my way is gotta die. Okay, I get it, but also, do we really have to go on a whole side quest into the snow biome or whatever and cut down people mindlessly? Was that really critical? I mean, I know they think her sister's in one of those places, but like, come on. It's like, of course, one of the sisters is not going to be just in the middle of a forest. She's going to be in the castle somewhere nearby the forest. It's just, this game just, it just frustrated me. There was a point, though, in C ending, and I will roll the clip for you. It might have been B. It was one of the two endings, B or C, that I actually flipped off the game. And that was because what it did was, at the end, after like you do this awesome boss fight, it plays the music from one of the endings of Drakengard 1, and it happens to be my favorite song from one of the endings of Drakengard 1. And I was just like, you're taking the piss now. Like, I love that game. I liked it. And then all of a sudden, here you are. You have not done any of the work to earn the right to use that song. And now you're trying to go like, oh, hey, remember Drakengard 1? Remember Drakengard 1, everybody? Let me roll the clip for you. Oh, fuck you, game. But that, I mean, that is a recreation of what happens, but that's quite literally what it was like playing it. Because I love the song Growing Wings from Drakengard 1, so to just have it willy-nilly, like, just thrown in there, like, oh yeah, remember that game? Even though the ending had nothing to do with the events that caused that song to trigger in Drakengard 1. And I mean nothing. There's no reference to the event that causes the wings to grow. There's no reference to that deity thing that shows up. Nothing. I mean, it is just out of the blue. We're just gonna reference that game. Just like, why? It was so bad. Yeah, this game on like multiple levels just got under my nerve. That said, it's not the worst. I've certainly played worse. Like, it is definitely an improvement gameplay-wise from Drakengard 1, especially with, like, the faster moving mechanics, the fact, like, you can dodge a bit easier, the fact that, like, spears are actually able to break these shield guys, like seen in this clip we're seeing right now. There were improvements, and also I did like the little challenge missions. So there's these like side challenge missions you have to do called Accord missions, and it's just you're doing these like, you're just fighting a certain amount of enemies in a certain amount of time, or doing these challenges for this character named Accord, who's very important to the plot, because she's kind of the one who explains why there's multiple endings to the game. Which, on that note, is something else that did annoy me with Drakengard 3, is that I kind of felt like the multiple endings didn't need to be explained. I felt like that was just something interesting that happened in this universe. And you could, like, at least how I would approach it is that you could kind of end the game where you wanted to mentally. Like, oh, here's the different branches or ways the story could end. And, you know, it was kind of up to the player or Yokotaro or whoever to just kind of decide what ending was officially canon. So I like that kind of it being not explained. This game tries to make it like a whole science where you have Accord going like, oh yes, when this happens, this causes a branch in the timeline, and then this causes this thing, and it's like, super long, and the entire lead up to D-Run is literally just explaining the whole branches and multiple ending things. I just felt it wasn't necessary and kind of took the fun out of like what ending's canon for you. And I didn't like it, so it was annoying, and again, I wasn't happy with it. I know it's hard because it's one of those where like I'm being mean to the game, but like it is taking the top spot for these lower honorable mentions, because at the end of the day it was a fun gameplay. I did stick it out all the way to D ending, and it was an interesting story. I like, as much as I complain about the characters, the actual story is interesting, and trying to figure out why this world is the way it is interesting. Like, you do kind of want to stick around. I know I bashed a chord for explaining the multiple timelines, but I just mean, like, why is the world of Drakengard like this? Why are the dragons important to this world? What, why are there some people who are capable of slaughtering entire armies, or why are there these weird monster things? So, like, there are good aspects to it. The gameplay, again, is a significant improvement over Drakengard. I haven't played the original Nier, so I don't know if this is better or worse. Like, I would say this is worse than Replicant, but Replicant's a remake from several years later, so that's kind of an unfair comparison. So, I'd be curious to see how it stacks up against the original Nier, but it's just, the storyline was good, but the characters just made this really hard to get through, and I was so happy when I finished it, because I didn't have to play this game again. And I know that's heresy to some, but that's the truth. I got rather annoyed at this game. Also, there's one other thing I should mention, and I kid you not, if you made it this far and you're really not interested in any spoilers, I'm going to spoil the ending of D-Run right now. So, I mean, really, click off if you are, unless you are certain you do not care about how this game ends. If you played Drakengard 1, and I am intentionally talking slow here, just to give people time to get out who don't want to hear this. If you played Drakengard 1, you played it to completion, you know that infamous ending. Well, guess what this game does? That's right! Rhythm Game is back! And it lasts a total of 8 minutes this time. And just like the first game, you fail once, it is back to the start. Time to start all over again. At least the first game was merciful and you only had the last 2.5 minutes. Oh, and even better, they took away the ability to pause so you can see what's going on. Yep, you better have that 8 minutes unavailable. Or more realistically, the several days you'll need to beat this. That ending was such a pain. And even better, you don't shoot out beams or like rays like you do in the first game. No. You have to form a bubble around Mikhail, and if you time it wrong, the bubble won't actually protect you. In my case, I had to use like a little trick with my emulator, and normally I would have tried to beat this legitimately, but either this was a problem with the emulator, admittedly, or the game is like this and I'm not sure which one it is, but it seemed like even when I hit the right button, it wouldn't register that I hit the button. And either you gotta put the shield up at precisely the right time, or because I emulated it, the timing was off, which is completely possible. I am fully willing to admit that if my emulator was the problem here, because this was an utter pain during that fight. But in the end, I mean, I eventually got through it. But as I said, I had to use an emulator trick, so I didn't technically legitimately do it. Criticizer, hang me if you will, but I mean, with the difficulties I was having with it, it just wasn't happening. So, and the game just ends, by the way, after that. Okay, there is an after credit scene. I won't reveal that because that actually is a heavy spoiler. And it's all just again, it's a cutscene. It's not like a gameplay thing. But again, overall, like, I did enjoy the story of this game. Some of the world building I didn't. Some of the world building I liked, and some I didn't. As much complaining as I did for this game, and I mean, I realize I can see the timeline. We're going into like 17, 18 minutes already, and I'm still going. So as much as I had to complain about this game, it's honestly not the worst. Like, and it's still a decent game. It's just my least favorite from this studio, or I guess Yoko Taro. Like, it's just my least favorite from him, and I have a lot of things I'd like not to be repeated in future games. But again, that's why I'm just particularly harsh on this. But it actually, like, again, it does deserve its place as like the best of the lower honorable mention games. So, like, just because I complained for the longest about this game is just because I have the most to say about it. I had some strong opinions, but I have to admit it still was a pretty entertaining game, and it is worth playing. Just that game is has some issues that at least I took issues with some choices the game made. But again, not a bad game, just didn't like certain aspects to it. Drakengard 3, you have won the award for the best of the lower category of honorable mentions. This was, again, I had complaints. You've heard them for the last 20 minutes, but it genuinely is a interesting and entertaining game. I hope you all enjoyed today's video, and next time we'll be continuing with the actual higher end of the honorable mentions before jumping in the game of the year. So with that, I will see you guys in the next one. Have a good day, everybody.